Joshua 5:14, the commander of the Lord's army and the deity of Jesus. Introduction. Joshua 5:14 presents a mysterious figure who identifies as the commander of the Lord's army. When Joshua encounters this figure, he falls to the ground in worship. The commander does not rebuke Joshua, but accepts the worship, a response reserved for God alone. This passage raises an important question. Was this the pre-incarnate Jesus? And if so, how does this confirm Jesus' divinity? Let's explore the evidence and challenge skeptics to reconcile this profound moment in Scripture. Section 1. The encounter in Joshua 5:13-15. The scene takes place as Joshua prepares for the conquest of Jericho. Joshua 5:13-15. Joshua sees a man with a drawn sword and asks, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" The figure replies, "Neither, but as commander of the army of the Lord I have now come." Joshua falls to the ground in worship and asks, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" Key observations. The commander's identity. The commander speaks with authority and represents the Lord's presence. Worship accepted. Unlike angels who deny worship, Revelation 19:10, the commander accepts Joshua's worship, indicating divinity. Holy ground. The commander tells Joshua to remove his sandals because the place is holy, mirroring God's words to Moses at the burning bush. Exodus 3:5. Challenge to skeptics. If worship is reserved for God alone, why does the commander accept worship, and what does this reveal about his identity? Section 2. Was the commander the pre-incarnate Jesus? Many scholars and theologians identify the commander as a Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. Divine authority. The commander's authority over the Lord's army reflects divine sovereignty. Colossians 2:15. Jesus disarmed rulers and authorities, a role consistent with the commander. Parallels with Revelation 19:11-14. In Revelation, Jesus is described as leading the armies of heaven. The armies of heaven were following him, riding on white horses and dressed in fine linen. Title as commander. The term commander of the army of the Lord aligns with Jesus' role as the head of all spiritual forces. Ephesians 1:21. Challenge to skeptics. How can the commander's divine attributes and acceptance of worship be explained unless he is the pre-incarnate Jesus? Section 3. Worship and divinity in the Old Testament. Scripture consistently teaches that worship is reserved for God alone. Exodus 20:3-5. The Ten Commandments explicitly forbid worshipping anyone or anything other than God. Revelation 19:10. When John attempts to worship an angel, the angel rebukes him. "Don't do that. I am a fellow servant. Worship God." In contrast, the commander in Joshua 5 accepts Joshua's worship without correction. This acceptance is a clear indication of his divine nature. Challenge to skeptics. If the commander was merely an angel or a created being, why does he allow worship, contradicting the rest of Scripture? Section 4. Jesus in the Old Testament. The appearance of the commander is one of many instances where Jesus is revealed in the Old Testament. Genesis 16:7-13. The angel of the Lord appears to Hagar and speaks with divine authority, identifying himself as the Lord. Exodus 3:2-6. The angel of the Lord appears to Moses in the burning bush, declaring the ground holy and identifying as God. Judges 13:18-22. Manoah and his wife encounter the angel of the Lord, who accepts their offering and ascends in the flames, leaving them in awe of having seen God. These appearances consistently reveal a figure who speaks as God, accepts worship, and displays divine attributes, all pointing to Jesus. Challenge to skeptics. How can the Old Testament consistently depict divine appearances if they are not manifestations of the pre-incarnate Christ? Section 5. The inescapable truth. Joshua 5:14 provides compelling evidence of Jesus' divine nature. The commander's acceptance of worship confirms his identity as God. His authority over the Lord's army aligns with Jesus' role in spiritual warfare and ultimate judgment. The parallels between the commander and Jesus in Revelation reveal a consistent portrayal of Christ's divinity. Closing challenge to skeptics. If Jesus is not God, how do you explain the commander's acceptance of worship in Joshua 5:14, a privilege reserved for God alone? How do you reconcile his divine authority, worship, and role in both the Old and New Testaments? The evidence is clear. Jesus Christ is the commander of the Lord's army, the pre-incarnate God revealed in Scripture.